Hello there, welcome back once again. This is the Lost Songs of Ireland podcast. I'm the host, Bill O'Brien. I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas and New Year. I do apologise, I hadn't really done any work or put anything out over the Christmas period. I've been very busy and a little bit ill as well, so I just kind of left it to the side for a bit. But now we're back in 2024, and I have a heap of projects that I'm working on, so I will have quite a few uploads over the next couple of months. Today, we're going to be talking about the Ballagh War Pipers. Now, this song is quite special to me because it's the song that more or less put me down this route of discovering old ballads and old songs from rural Ireland. Ballagh is a village in County Tipperary. It's the village where I went to primary school when I first moved to this country. So it'd be my local village growing up as a child, and I live very close to it today. And finding this song in the National Folklore Archives that came from Ballagh National School really made me think a lot about local history, how much of it is lost and how important it is, and also how important it is to me. So I spent a bit of time chasing around after this song, looking for more. And the more I looked through the archives of local village schools, the more I found that there were more and more of these local specific songs that are more or less lost to time or forgotten and only exist in these archives. And it kind of started this adventure that I've been on for the past 6, 7, 8 months, however long it's been at this stage. So a little bit about the War Piper band. Now, they were officially, from looking at various newspaper sources, they seem to kind of be officially formed in 1908 in Knockvilla, which is another little village close to Ballagh. It would be just up the road from Ballagh. Knockvilla would have been a bit bigger than Ballagh itself, and they were formed as a military wing of the IRB, the Irish Republican Brotherhood. Now, there's a lot going on with the IRB. They're a very, very, very important organisation in this country, and not just in this country. They had branches all over in England and America as well. So the IRB, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, was a secret oath-bound organisation set about to bring about a united Ireland, a democratic, self-governing united Ireland. And this was through force of arms. They realised that the only way this was ever going to happen was through force of arms. Now, the IRB would have came from the Young Islanders, which is to say the same tradition, but just a few generations beforehand. The Young Islanders were involved in lots of rebellions. There are folklore sources that associate the Ballagh War Pipers with the Young Islanders rebellion going back to the mid 1800s. Like 1848 was their big attempt at a rebellion across the country, but it was very much a failure. The 1848 rebellion in Ireland did not go very well for anybody, and the music played by the Ballagh War Pipers would have been heavily influenced by the 1848 rebellion, and quite possibly a lot of the men that played with them would have either played would have played their pipes in a band, whether or not they were formerly the Ballagh War Pipers. But a lot of the players and pipers, and possibly their sons and grandsons, would have joined the Ballagh War Pipers. Now, the Ballagh War Pipers were very big. They were very, very popular at the time. I've got a historical account of a few IRB meetings and Irish volunteer meetings. Now, the IRB was the secret society that went about recruiting and organising the Irish volunteers, who, between these two organisations, this was the 1916 Rising. These were the organisations that organised and executed the 1916 Rising, which led to the formation of the Irish Dáil, which led to a civil war, which then went on, um, laid the way for Ireland to become its own self-governing state. So the military organisation around this was one of the most influential things to have happened in this country. It directly led to our emancipation from the crown, from the British crown, and the establishment of an Irish democratic state. Now, the Ballagh War Pipers themselves were largely the Dwyer clan of Ballagh in Tipperary, or O'Dwyer, who lived on a farmhouse on a hill just above the primary school that I attended as a child. And learning this really, really impressed me. Because there are still Dwyers in the area. There were people on my school bus whose surname was O'Dwyer, and it's very, very likely that these are direct descendants, or at least distant family members of the Ballagh War Pipers band. Now, the pipes that they played would have been war pipes, standard war pipes, which are more or less the same as what the Scots were playing in the Highlands and in their military bands. Now, the war pipes are not the same as the uilleann pipes, the Union pipes, which is most commonly associated with Irish and Irish traditional music today. Now, a war pipe had 3 drones, first of all, and it was a much, much louder instrument. Obviously, the purpose of a war pipe is communication during a battlefield. It was also played standing up and marching, whereas the uilleann pipe is strictly an instrument that you sit down and put the thing on your lap and play. Now, the explanation I've heard for this from a couple of pipers, old lads who play the pipes, have told me that the reason for this was penal laws, in that the British occupying state pretty much forbade Irish Catholics from playing a pipe standing up, and as a result they invented a pipe that you play sitting down, so that it was legal according to the penal laws. I'm not fully convinced that that's true, but it's a really cool story anyway, so I thought I'd repeat it. And it fits in with the general theme in Ireland that almost anything unique or strange or odd that the Irish do today, all the strange little customs, almost always the explanation for those is because the Brits. So I just thought I'd throw that little association out there, but I'm not 100% sure that is true. I've only heard it from hearsay, from stories that lads have told me down the pub. So make of that what you will. Now, the history of playing bagpipes in their various forms in Ireland is quite old. The earliest account of a bagpipe being played is from around the year 900, but this is not for the purpose of war. There's quite a few depictions of bagpipe type instruments being played in various medieval manuscripts from around 1400 onwards. But again, this would not have been the war pipes that would have been played by the Ballagh War Pipers around the early 1900s. Neither would they have been the uilleann pipes. There was probably most likely some variation of the Scottish Highland pipe that's being depicted in these manuscripts. Now, one of the earliest written accounts of the bagpipes being used for war in Ireland comes from an 1581 volume written by the musician Vincenzo Galilei, who, strangely enough, is the father of the great astronomer Galileo Galilei. I had no idea his father was a famous musician who wrote about Ireland, but I found that very interesting. He wrote about the bagpipe in Ireland, quotation, is much used by the Irish. To its sound, this unconquered, fierce and warlike people march their armies and encourage each other to deeds of valour. With it they also accompany the dead to the grave, making such sorrowful sounds as to invite, nay, compel the bystander to weep. In the same year, that was the end of the quote. In the same year, John Derrick published the poem The Image of Ireland, in which the pipes were already used to convey signals in battle. But the lines of the poem are as follows. Now go the foes to wrack, the kern apace do sweet, and bagpipe then instead of trump do lull the back retreat. So that's two accounts of Irish pipes being used in war that come from the year 1581. So obviously it's a long tradition that goes back quite a long way in Irish culture. Now, the use of the bagpipes pretty much disappeared towards the late 1800s. Again, largely because I'd attribute that largely to An Gorta Mór, the Irish famine that wasn't a famine. A lot of music died during that period. This is after the golden age of Irish balladry, where a lot of the ballad singers either left the country or just starved to death or just had to find other work to sustain themselves. At this era, there was a lot less wandering minstrels, so the bagpipes or the Irish pipes tended to kind of disappear from society. There was a big move to revive bagpipe music, starting in the 1890s onwards. This has a lot to do with a general revival of Gaelic culture that was going on at the time. It was around then that so many of the great epic sagas were written down for the first time. In a previous podcast, I mentioned the cattle raid of Cooley. This is part of a big collection of epic sagas and stories that form Irish mythology. There was a huge resurgence in this in general from 1890s onwards, which was very much had its purpose. Its purpose was to encourage Irish men to pick up arms and fight and die for Ireland, because you'd all these secret societies that were trying to liberate the country from British colonialism, and art, storytelling and music was a huge part of that. Another angle for this resurgence, specifically in pipes in Ireland, was because I imagine, I'm kind of adding two and two together here, but the IRB were very, very involved in sending Irish men over to America during their Civil War. The reason for this was to gain battle experience. So an awful lot of Irishmen fought in the American Civil War on the Union side and came back to Ireland after the war had finished and shared their battle experiences and the tactics that were used, and generally took what they'd learned while over there to train men in Ireland to fight in armies against the British colonial oppressors. And a huge, and as everybody knows, if anyone knows anything about the American Civil War, fife music was very, very important. You can't hardly watch a TV show or a movie set during the American Civil War without hearing a fife being played, or a military band with a drum and a fife at some stage, because it was absolutely integral to the Civil War. Obviously, the reason for this is, like, traditionally military bands were never just for entertainment for the soldiers. The reason for a military band was communication, because at the time where they were developed, battlefields were fought without electricity, without phones or walkie-talkies or satellites or anything like that. So music being a sound that can be heard from far away was adopted to convey messages between battalions, between commanders and their troops. Like that, specific songs or specific tunes would be played to order a retreat, or to signal that reinforcements were coming and things like this. So there was a lot of messages or codes even being transmitted across the battlefield by the musicians, by the drummers and by the pipe players. It's drums and pipes largely, because drums very much for keeping the beat, for keeping an army disciplined and marching, and the pipes were often employed because their sound could be heard very distinctly in very, very long distances. So I imagine, I suppose that the resurgence of Irish war pipes at the time had a lot to do with soldiers returning from America, having experienced fifes and drums being used on the battlefield in the way that they were, and obviously coming back to Ireland to hopefully employ those same strategies during the fight for Irish freedom. So I'll play the song for you now anyway. I've arranged this on a guitar, and the air I'm using is more or less the Limerick Rake, which would have been popular around the area at the time, and it seems to fit. I could be wrong about the air here, but it seems to fit. So here's the Ballagh War Pipers. One evening of late, as I was going for a stroll by the old village school, slowly pacing alone, surprised by the sound of a musical tone, the tone of the Ballagh War Pipers. I stood in amazement and I listened with joy, and I hastened me steps till I landed close by. Like music from heaven, right down from the sky, rang the tone of the Ballagh War Pipers. The music sprang forth from a farmer's abode. His name was Dwyer, a DC at the board. Lover of music which history knows, and a home for the Ballagh War Pipers. This green little Ireland I've traversed all o'er, the Highlands of Scotland I once did explore. Such music in me life I never heard before as the roar of the Ballagh War Pipers. We are famed agitators since the year 81. We're never now absent with old fife and drum. Now we have music that's second to none. Success to our Ballagh War Pipers. It must be remembered that we didn't fail. We stormed Dundrum, banished Maud and his tail. Our boys, they were captured and cast into jail, played home by the Ballagh War Pipers. But in the near future, I'm proud for to say, we'll storm Templemore, Holy Cross and Davey, smash up their ranches without much delay, by the roar of the Ballagh War Pipers. So I found during my research for this a few references to the Ballagh War Pipers in a document from the Bureau of Military History from 1913 to 1921. It's a statement of witness by an Eamon O'Dwyer from Ballagh in Gould's Cross, County Tipperary. I can only assume he was one of the Ballagh War Pipers or was related to them. But this is an account of his. This man was an organizer for the Irish Republican Brotherhood and the Irish Volunteers. So he would have been one of the lads organising the battalions from Tipperary that took place in the 1916 Rising and the battles that came after that. So he references Ballagh quite a few times. He says in this document that he attended Ballagh National School until the age of 13, when he left, and he writes a few accounts of the pipers at public meetings. I'll read this out. In turn now, we held Irish volunteer recruiting meetings all over the area, and these were addressed by P.C. O'Mahony, who was a county centre of the IRB, Seamus O'Neill, who was a professor in Rockwell College, Parias McCanna, Richard Tracy, myself, and some others. One of the greatest gatherings we had was some time after the division in the Irish Volunteers, when we called a big meeting for Knockavilla in the night time, headed by the Irish War Pipers band from Ballagh and a crowd of torchbearers. We led a force of a couple of hundred volunteers over 1,000 of the general public to Knockavilla, where the meeting was addressed in defiant terms by Father Matt Ryan, PP, Richard Tracy, and myself. The Irish Volunteers rallied again in many quarters. The three parishes I have already mentioned had a hard core of resistance to the foreigner, and so too had Ballycahill, Anfield, and the Rag, with the Maher family and many others. He says a few pages later, there's another reference to the War Pipers, which is as follows. Now, in that year, as far as the organisation of the volunteers went, I could say that we increased our number very much. But we had done a lot in 1914, and there wasn't very much more we could do, nor could be done until after Easter 1916. But we were pretty strong, and the only thing we were short of was arms, and it was not easy to get them. Shotguns were fairly plentiful, but after all they were not proper warlike weapons. Now I don't know when I finished this business with O'Rahilly, but it must have been some time in 1916, and I had a good deal of stuff got in that period for the Irish Volunteers organisation, and O'Rahilly was very pleased with my work. He even told me so on Easter Sunday morning, on 1916. He just mentioned it when he called to my place with the order from Owen McNeill. One of the big things we helped, the Volunteers, Sinn Féin, and of course the Gaelic League being mixed up in it, was a great gathering at Doon, County Limerick, on a Saturday night. There was a combination of dance, concert, and a monster meeting. We went there, bringing with us the Ballagh War Pipers and a huge crowd. There must have been anything from 1,000 to 2,000 people at this gathering. So from these two passages alone, it's very indicative of how important a piping band was in organising these types of meetings. I suppose if you want to draw as much of a crowd as you possibly can to your meeting, put on some great music. O'Dwyer goes on to say, Ballagh was the storm centre of a national struggle for many years, carried on in our day by us and the anti-ranch war, and the clearing out of the great families of the arch-victors of our people. Of these arch-victors, it be noted, some were Catholic and others Protestant. Gone since those days are the Mauds of Dundrum, Carden from Bunnan, Clark from Holy Cross, Matthew from Thomastown, Scully from Ballinaglog, and many others. Then we joined Conradh na Gaeilge, Sinn Féin, and the Irish Volunteers, and under the surface of things, the hidden IRB. It is in Clonalty Parish, and the principal speaker of this was Father Matt O'Rian, the Doughty parish priest of Knockavilla. He spoke glowingly at the opening and the gathering about 1:30 p.m. and again at 5 p.m. when people went home to milk the cows and have tea and came back again. Enthused by all he saw and heard that day, Father Matt spoke again at 10 p.m. That night, when he wound up the proceedings, doubtless Prius McCanna, Seamus O'Neill, and Richard Tracy also spoke there. The Pipers band discoursed stirring music. Sean Stapleton led in the volunteers of Colin and Ula, uniformed and with bayoneted rifles on their shoulders. Singers, dancers, and reciters by the score were there, and including a contingent from faraway Waterford. This contingent included the famous reciter Myra New, who later became the wife of Austin Malloy, the black and white Celtic design artist. A few years ago, there was published a beautiful and bulky Christmas book in Irish, written by their daughter and illustrated by Mr. Malloy. So this pipe bands from a tiny little village in the middle of Tipperary would have been present for a lot of these very, very important organising meetings of the IRB. The Mauds that are referenced to in the previous passage as well were a large landowning family that resided in Dundrum, County Tipperary, which is probably 8 miles up the road from Ballagh. So they were a very, very big landlord family, and they would have been very, very well known in the area, involved in evictions during the famine and the pre-famine era. and who resided in Dundrum House, which is now Dundrum House Hotel today, with a big golf course around it that you can go and visit if you so wish. So I'm going to wrap that up there. It's only a short episode, this one, because I couldn't find another song referencing the Ballagh War Pipers. I found another version of the same song with a couple of words changed, and I can't really see the point of recording and sharing two of the same song just with a couple of words different. So I'll finish there. I've been Bill O'Brien. This is the Lost Songs of Ireland podcast. I do have a Patreon. If you do wish to support what I'm doing, take a look. It's patreon.com/BaldBill. I'm also on Instagram as BaldBill, BAULDBILL. Do give us a follow, give us a share, give us a like, all of that crack. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode.